Welcome, everyone. This is where we get started on some of the initial content in ECON105, Principles of Microeconomics. This is exciting stuff. I think I told you before, I love econ. I love getting to talk about it. So I hope that this becomes, of some interest and of some use to you all as well. So, when I do this in the classroom, I usually play part of a song before this, and this, the one that I would normally play here is by Harry Chapin, and you may have heard this. This is an old song, right? The Cat's in the Cradle and the Silver Spoon, Little Boy Blue and the Man on the Moon. So it's about, so if you know that song, or if you don't, you might listen to it on YouTube. It talks about sort of a sense of regret about this dad who missed out on a lot of times with his kid, missed some birthday parties, wasn't always there to play catch. It talks about how he's always catching a flight. And so in the song, it doesn't make him sound like some sort of deadbeat dad who's not taking responsibility. It sounds like he's working very hard professionally to provide for his family, but that means that he's away. And so my question then is, well, why doesn't he do both? Why doesn't he do a great job, put a lot of effort into his job and succeed and make lots of money and be home for every little league game and every birthday party and every weekend event as well? Well, and that's the trade-off, right? Why the answer to that is probably we run out of time, right? He doesn't have enough time to do both. And so in a world where our time is limited, we can't always accomplish everything, and sometimes we have to ultimately make trade-offs. This comes up in other places too, and so I asked the question, why do we make choices? So we talked about Harry Chapin, that's at the bottom. Here's this Robert Frost poem. You can look this up online. I posted it in Blackboard as well. You may have read this in high school. And it's about a fork in the road, right? Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry, I could not travel them both. Basically, he had to make a choice. So why do we make choices? Well, because we live in a world of limited resources. We have a limited amount of time. Do you get to do everything, purchase everything, pursue everything that you'd like? No, probably not, right? We have a limited amount of money, right? Our income and our wealth is limited. The oil in the ground is limited, the number of trees available. Lately, we might see that, the number of bicycles available for purchase or kayaks or other things are limited, right? They're not just freely available. So the answer to this, why do we make choices, is scarcity. And scarcity has sometimes been called the economic condition. That is, we live in a world of scarce resources. All right, and so those include time, money, minerals in the ground, trees, lumber. Now, those are renewable resources. You can plant more trees, but you won't have harvestable timber for decades, right? So all of our resources, I guess that's redundant because I wrote it on the left, but those sorts of things, they're limited and they're scarce, and so we have to make choices about how to allocate them. So because we have to choose, because of scarcity, right, the economic condition, we have to make choices. We're required to make choices. And that introduces another important concept in economics, and that is opportunity cost. So when you have to choose, and you choose one option, that leaves one or more options unchosen, unselected. And those things that you didn't do, that's the opportunity cost. So opportunity cost is the best option foregone when making a choice. So in the case of Robert Frost's, roads that diverged in yellow wood, that fork in the road, there it's easy, right? There's only two options, and so when you pick one of them, right? So when you choose to go in one direction, then the other one, the one you don't choose, that's your opportunity cost. Now, sometimes we have, if you have $100, and you're thinking about how to spend it, you end up ultimately spending it on one thing or one bundle of things. Maybe you and someone go out to dinner or get takeout, whatever it is. And then there might be not just one, but dozens of things you didn't do. But opportunity cost is the most highly valued option foregone, the best option. Right? So opportunity cost is not every possible thing you could have done instead of what you actually did, but it's the next best thing. Right? So it's the best option you didn't choose. So it's sort of this, what you anticipate is the second best option. So that is a lot of econ right there, right? Scarcity, choice, and opportunity cost. This shows up in many areas. It shows up in politics, at all sorts of levels. It shows up at institutions, for-profit companies, non-profit institutions. It shows up at the personal level, right? As you already said, how do you allocate your money? How do you allocate your time? You're taking a summer class, right? Or you're taking an online class. That means that's less time to do certain other things. It may be a really good choice, but it just means you have to acknowledge that you're giving up other options at the same time. That's your opportunity cost. Most interesting man in the world faces this, and I do as well. The orange pants is a joke, in in-person classes. Later on, there's a day when we talk about consumer surplus, and I usually wear a pair of orange pants. So you can summarize this another way, and again, you're missing out on the audio because I can't do the writing on the screen and the audio clips in the same software. But I summarize all of this as a classic rock debate. You don't necessarily have to write this down, but Queen, right, has a song that says, "I want it all," right? I want it all. And then he says, "I want it now," right? So Queen is illustrating, right, the unlimited wants, right? That we want many, many things. And then what do the Rolling Stones say? By the way, Mick Jagger studied econ at the London School of Economics, right? So he may know a thing or two about this. He dropped out. And we could say that may have been the best decision. Why? Now, and I'm not saying that most of us should drop out of school. School is a really worthwhile investment. Higher education, even if it's expensive, is still a positive investment for most people. But for Mick Jagger, why might it have made sense for him to drop out? Because his opportunity cost was too high, right? The Rolling Stones turned out to be, very, very successful. And so in order to stay in school, he might have had to give up, right, pursuing the Rolling Stones, and that may not have made sense. Why do many athletes, right? Why do Division I, football or basketball players sometimes leave and go pro before they finish their college education? You could describe it with economics and say their opportunity cost was too high, right? So the value of going pro, in their prime, outweighed the value of completing their college degree, right, at that point in time. And so for many people, that might make sense. So to get back to the Stones and what they say, right, they say you can't always get what you want, right? But you find sometimes get what you need. Right? So anyway, the Stones say you can't always get what you want. They're talking about scarce resources. Queen says, I want it all and I want it now. They're talking about unlimited wants. This plays into the definition of economics. I thought it was on the next slide. It might be down. Right, a classic definition of economics. Let me write that a little bit neater. A sort of textbook definition of economics is the study of the allocation of scarce resources among competing, or some people say unlimited, wants. I hope you can read that. I'll read it to you again. Economics, many people would say, is the study of the allocation of scarce resources among competing or unlimited wants. And so there it is, scarce resources and unlimited wants or competing wants. That's what economics is all about. So, are there exceptions to this? Are there exceptions to scarcity? The shortest answer to this is probably no. A more thorough answer might be no with an asterisk. like except maybe in certain limited situations. So are there free goods? Are there exceptions? So Sheryl Crow had a song it's called "Soak Up the Sun." Right, I'm going to soak up the sun while it's still free. So is sunlight a free good? Is sunlight an exception to scarcity? Well, it depends. What do we mean by that? There's still, if you're going to just sit out there and soak up the sun, maybe it doesn't cost you much in terms of money, or resources, but it does cost you time, right? There's an opportunity cost of your time. If you're going to just hang out at the beach, or hang out even and just sit out on your back deck and enjoy a nice day, that's awesome. You might say, well, doesn't cost me money like going to the movies or doing something else, but it does cost you your time. There's an opportunity cost to your time. While you're doing that, you're not studying, you're not working, you're not going for a run, right? There's other things that you're giving up. So sunlight is, there may be situations where it's pretty close to a free good, or maybe, and sometimes it is, but, we still have to say, there's an opportunity cost to enjoy it. What about solar energy? Well, when the sun is out and it's not nighttime and it's not obscured by clouds, that the energy from the sun is available, but it takes resources to collect it and turn it into electricity. Right, so it takes resources to build the solar panels, right, and install them and maintain them and connect them to the grid. So there are costs even to collecting solar energy or wind energy or other forms of renewable energy. But the closest things that you might get would have to do with sun or maybe air or water. So is air a free good? Well, we're all sitting around inhaling, exhaling, right, breathing air. It only costs us a few calories, right, of energy to burn, like to move our diaphragm and our lungs, right, and process and pump the heart. So it doesn't cost us much, but it's not like it's freely available everywhere, right? Air quality is better in some places than others, right? In some city, in Los Angeles, in August, sometimes the smog is really bad. Sometimes in Western New York in the spring, the pollen is heavy. So for some people, find it to be, less, the air quality is lower, because of the allergens. And if you're a scuba diver or an astronaut, right, you understand how air is not freely available in all situations. Same with water, right? Water, you're hiking along, a nice trail in the Adirondacks. Maybe there's a crisp mountain stream and you can bend over and get water, good, crisp, clean water pretty easily, right? At very low cost. You got to bend down, cup your hands, right, and drink it. So the cost is pretty low, but it's not like it's available everywhere, right? There are plenty of places where, deserts, oceans, right? Just other places, in the Adirondacks when you're at higher elevations, right, where water might not be easily or readily available. So, there you go. Are there exceptions? I just want you to think through this, right? Basically, if there are exceptions, so if you want to choose the answer with the asterisk, like there may be some exceptions, they're probably very, very limited in time and scope, right, when they apply. For the most part, and maybe completely, we live in a world of scarcity, right, and that there's very little that's free. So this is the slide I was thinking of that I thought was back one more. This is economics, right? The study of the allocation of scarce resources among competing or unlimited wants. It's all summed up in a few classic rock songs and your everyday experiences. So that is sort of the first thing we've talked about here. So I've already checked it off just to keep myself organized here. Scarcity, choice, opportunity cost, right? This is econ. Are there exceptions to that? Probably not, or if so, very, very limited ones. Free lunch, something that follows from this is an expression that economists like to use. There's no such thing as a free lunch. All things that we enjoy, have an opportunity cost, require resources, right? So there's no free lunch. That's just a way of summarizing, or getting at this idea of scarcity. So the other couple things I want to talk about today, or in this particular video, are rational choice, incentives, and models. We're jumping around a little bit, and then in the next one we'll pick up with the remaining topics on this list. So If along the way you have questions, make note of those. Follow up during office hours. Talk to your friends. Use the discussion board. Use the resources at your disposal. Go back to the book. Rewatch the video. Read those parts of the textbook. But do follow up. I'm happy to chat. In office hours and help you with anything that's not totally making sense yet. Just a couple. Another examples of opportunity cost here to wrap up. Is there really free pizza? Well, yeah, in college, right? They give out free pizza to get people to go to clubs. But you have to show up at the club. There's an opportunity cost to your time. And that pizza is not manna from heaven that just appeared, right? Someone had to pay for it. Someone had to use resources to grow wheat and make flour and get yeast and sauce and cheese and toppings and bake them and prepare them. So no free pizza, right? Technology sometimes reduces opportunity costs. This is how people used to get free tickets. Right? When there were, quote, free tickets to a concert, people would stand in line for hours and hours and hours to get the, quote, free tickets. Well, what's the opportunity cost of all these people standing in line? They all could be doing other things as well. So now, when there are, quote, free tickets, right, they become available on the internet at a certain time, and right at that moment, lots of people are hovered over their phones or their laptops trying to snatch up those free tickets. But in total, I feel like we sort of waste a lot less time, using technology to allocate those, quote, free tickets than we used to. So maybe that's a good thing. So, the next topic on that list is rational choice. Economists assume generally that people make rational choices. That is, that they try to make themselves better off when they make decisions. So this is not really anything too extraordinary, right? But it gets some pushback when we assume people are rational. People are like, oh, I know my friend does not always act rationally. Right? So, and I get that. But all we're saying is that when you make a decision and you look at the options, you choose the one that you think will make yourself better off. And sometimes you're wrong, right? Have you ever made a bad decision? Sure, many of us have, right? At the time, it seemed like the right thing to do, and in hindsight, it did not turn out so well. But at the point in time when you made the decision, if you were trying to make yourself better off, if you're trying to advance the ball, that's rational choice. And you throw a pass that's easily intercepted, it turns out it didn't work out so well, but it didn't mean that you weren't trying to do the best thing at the time. So that's really all we mean. We'll talk a little bit more about this when we get to models, because this is an assumption that goes into many economic models. And so the bar for this assumption is fairly low. I think in many cases, we meet it. And then the question is, if we don't, does that wreck the models? Well, we'll talk about that later. But basically what we're saying with rational choice is that people try to make themselves better off, and they try to advance the ball at the point in time when they make the decision. So this is me in a classic British Roadster. That's the 1971 MGB that I owned for a period of time. And it was a rational choice when I bought it. I had committed to it. I was in grad school. I was going to go to law school, and these are actually way cheaper than most cars. I had a lot of fun. I met a girl, took her on a lot of dates. We got married. So it was a rational choice when I purchased it, and then when I became a lawyer for a while and didn't have time to fiddle with it and get towed home on a regular basis, it was a rational choice when I sold it. So at any rate, I was at the point in time when I made the decision, I was trying to make myself better off, and I believe that ultimately I think I did. At any rate, the most interesting man in the world, or the former most interesting man in the world, he's been replaced by a younger model now. Says, I have goals and I choose means to attain them, right? I try to advance the ball. I try to move toward my goal. That's what an economist would call rational choice. So the next topic I want to talk about, and so I don't want to slide this down because the next picture is fun and startling. But the next thing I want to talk about are incentives. I'm not sure why there was such a big space there. Incentives. The book talks about positive incentives and negative incentives. In a nutshell, though, economists assume or believe that people respond to incentives. right? That how do you motivate people to do things? Well, they act differently depending on the incentives. Do you I don't know, shower and get dressed and primp differently, for a big date than you do to go out and mow the lawn? Sure, right? The incentives are different. Do people spend more time studying and reading and outlining when there's a big exam coming up than when there's not? Sure, the incentives are different, right? People respond to incentives. And economists believe that people respond to incentives in fairly predictable ways, and if we think it through, we can make better policies by thinking through all of the effects, the primary and the secondary effects, when people are responding to changes in the incentives and changes in the world around them. So, here's the question. Do safety features in cars, such as airbags and seatbelts, do they make us safer, or do they introduce more risk and make us worse off? Well, probably they make us safer, right? I mean, people survive accidents, much at a higher rate with airbags and seatbelts than they do without them. So between the 1950s, and today, we've seen drastic increases in safety features in cars, and it's had a lot of positive effects. But there is an economic study at some point in the past that showed that all of these safety features in cars actually made life a little more dangerous for pedestrians, and that even controlling for miles given, that pedestrians crossing streets and walking on sidewalks were actually at slightly higher risk as the safety features got more advanced. Can you think about why that would be? Well, there's always risk, to being in an accident. There are always costs. You can get injured. Your car could be damaged. You lose time from work. But with all the safety features, you feel just a little bit safer in your car. So on the margin, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, on the margin, do people take more risk? Are you slightly more likely to peek at your phone and see what that text was, that ding was? Right? I don't recommend that. That's dangerous. But on average, is someone a little bit more likely to take that risk and do something that diverts their attention away from the road if they have seatbelts and airbags and lots of safety features compared to if they didn't? And to drive that point home, a couple of economists over time have suggested if we really wanted to reduce accidents in cars, we shouldn't be putting airbags and seatbelts in. We should require that every car have a razor-sharp dagger affixed to the middle of the steering wheel, pointing directly at the chest of the driver. Would you drive more carefully if your car was equipped with a razor-sharp dagger on the steering wheel? Yes, we probably would. And many of us might drive a lot less, and we'd be very, very careful when we were driving. I'm not suggesting this is the efficient outcome. There's no way this becomes policy, but it just gets at this point about incentives. People respond differently to incentives. Enough said. Questions? All right, the last topic in this particular video, models. No, not that kind of model. Although this is actually, Jody Beggs is a Harvard-trained economic educator, does some great stuff, has a website with great economic resources. She's reading a book in this picture, just various pictures of her reading books, lots of great econ books. This one's by Tyler Cowen. So if you're looking for something interesting to read sometime, I actually recommend this, Discover Your Inner Economist. It's a good read. I have some other recommendations if any of you are interested in some popular books to supplement over time later in the summer or in over Christmas break, or just when you have some downtime. I have some recommendations if you'd like to pursue this econ thing a little more. Now, we're talking about models of a different type, models that are simplifications of reality. Reality is complex and hard to understand, and sometimes we need to strip it down to its bare bones to try to get a handle on it, right, and make some general understanding. So what are we trying to depict in this, in this picture? That looks like a model of the solar system. And that's actually a pretty elaborate one. I think all of those gears probably cause the various planets to revolve around the sun at the appropriate, in the speed ratio, because some of them go around faster, than others. So that's a fairly complex model, but it's still radically simplified from the real world, right? From the world that we live in, where we can't see most of the other planets out there, with the naked eye. With telescopes, we can see some, and it's taken years and, centuries of study to understand what we do know, right, about outer space. So when you have a model, you strip down the complexity, and you get you assume away, right? So you make assumptions to reduce complexity. So let's stick with this for a second. You make assumptions, you simplify away, and then so something I would do in the classroom, right? If we were all physically together, I usually hop up on a table and I hold a marker up as close to the ceiling as I can get it. And if I drop the marker, what happens? Well, it falls down and hits the floor. How long does it take? Oh, we could time that, right? If we had a stopwatch, we could get a kind of accurate-ish measurement of that. Could we predict how long it would take? If we measured the height from the ceiling to the floor and did a little internet research, found some couple of those things from high school physics that you might have not used in a while, especially the acceleration constant, right? Was it 1.6 meters per second squared? So if we measured the distance from the ceiling to the floor and did a little math, could we predict how long it will take for that marker to fall? Absolutely. Right? Hopefully we could get pretty close. Some measurement error probably. But that constant from physics, right? The acceleration constant of 1.6 meter per second squared, does that technically apply in the classroom at St. John Fisher College? No, that applies in a vacuum at sea level. And we're not in a vacuum. There's air, molecules, and dust and other stuff, in the way. And we're above sea level, right? So we're a different distance from the center of the Earth. So while it's not exactly accurate, right, the model that gives us 1.6 meters per second squared assumes that you're at sea level, and it assumes that you're in a vacuum, right? Those are some of the assumptions to simplify away the complexity. Nevertheless, even though those assumptions are false, right, they don't actually hold up in the classroom, it still gives us a good prediction. And so Walter Williams, one of my professors in grad school, used to say the test of a model is its ability to predict. So the test of a model is its ability to predict, not whether or not its assumptions are in fact true, right? The test of a model is its ability to predict. If it does a good job of predicting things and explaining things, then it's a good model, even if the assumptions are false. We'll see that in Chapter 2 when we develop our first model, and we start off with a couple simplifying assumptions that are patently false. Not true, but it simplifies the world down to a very, very simple level where we can start to understand that, and maybe we can extrapolate from that and understand, in an economic sense, some bigger things. So that's the beauty of models. We make assumptions to simplify, so that we can better understand, and then hopefully that understanding is useful, in the more complex world as well. And so that leads us to the scientific method, right? Where you might have learned about Popperian science, at some point in the past. You come up with a research question or a hypothesis that leads to a model, and then you test it. We said a test of a model is its ability to predict. Does it give accurate predictions? Does it accurately explain what really happens? And so what I can't play for you because I don't have the sound. You might have a question. What does the fox say? Right? Maybe that's your question, and so then you come up with a hypothesis that it says ring ding 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 ding, and then you test it. You go out, you find a fox, you talk to him, and you find out that the fox doesn't talk like that, and so you refuted essentially your hypothesis. This guy here, right, Olaf, right, in the movie. He has a hypothesis about how cool it would, that's probably not the right word, how interesting and fun and awesome it would be to be a snowman in summer, right? So he has this song where he talks about how awesome it would be to be a snowman in summer. He has a hypothesis about what summer would be like. Is he correct? If you listen to that song from the movie Frozen, is he correct? No, probably not. I suggest that in the old Christmas special, Frosty the Snowman, that hypothesis was tested when Frosty got trapped in the greenhouse, and in fact, right, things did not end well for Frosty. So I suggest that Olaf's hypothesis has already been tested, and it did not pass. So that is, I've gone on quite a while. That's, a good practice is to keep the videos probably a little shorter than this. I'll work on that. But that'll be the end of this one. Work through that, see if you have any questions, and then when you're ready, move on to the next video.